Award-winning author and Hamiltonian Gary Barwin is out with his newest novel. He joins us this morning ahead of the launch tonight of Nothing the Same, Everything Haunted, the Ballad of Motl, the Cowboy. And Gary joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to see you. And I have to say, you've got probably the best Zoom or Skype background I've seen in an author in a long time. So kudos for that. Also, okay, this book, I don't know how to describe it. You describe it for us, what it's about.
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that. But, well, one thing is it's making, there's this guy in 1941 Lithuania who, in the middle of the Holocaust, when the Nazis invaded Lithuania, and he's imagining he's a cowboy. Cowboy novels were really popular at that time. In fact, Hitler's favorite writer was this cowboy novelist, Karl May, this German guy who imagined indigenous people to be these, noble, savage stereotypes. And at the same time, Hitler also borrowed a lot of ideas from the Holocaust from what happened to indigenous people. So my guy sets off imagining he's a cowboy. He has something that he's looking for because he's got a quest. He's a cowboy. 20 years before, his testicles were shot off in the Swiss mountains, and they've fallen into a glacier and have frozen. So he wants to retrieve them. And
that's the part I wanted you to describe.
yeah. And then he wants to create new life in the midst of all this, death. As a kind of sign, like it's worth being born, despite how awful and tragic things are. So basically that's the story, is him going to find his testicles in the mountain, meanwhile going through the Holocaust and dealing with what it is to be a man, what it is to be in the Holocaust, what it is to be compassionate and to live in the real world.
Right, and you have done it in typical Gary Barwin style with great humor, although great horror as well. Like reading this, you get to a really heavy spot and I'm like, oh, how could I go on? And then you'll have like one little line in there that just brings it all back to, okay, this is a Gary Barwin novel.
I'm really glad that you think that, because for me, humor is one of the great technologies that we have as humans to get by difficult things, to reassure ourselves, to build community, to talk to each other, even in the midst of the worst possible things that can happen. I had an interesting talk with the Indigenous novelist Drew Hayden Taylor about Jewish humor and about Indigenous humor and how there's this connection because both groups of people having dealt with incredible adversity and how humor helps you through one way or another. And so does storytelling, which is part of humor, I think. Just basic storytelling helps you through, the pandemic, through your life and through, horrors like the Holocaust.
Right, right. And actually there's a great line, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a point in the novel where Motl, our hero, is speaking to a group of indigenous kids when he's much older, and he says, a Jewish cowboy isn't a regular one. He's more like you, First Nations, because he knows something about being rounded up, about not being able to live where you want. And I thought, wow, that's kind of the nugget of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, once, I made a connection between Manifest Destiny and kind of clearing the frontier for settlers, and then Liebestrom, which was what Hitler's plan to clear Eastern Europe to make room for Germans. It's like, oh, that's the same thing. And then actually Hitler makes explicit reference to North America and what happened to indigenous people. And so that's horrifying. And also, I remember when the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women report came out and it mentioned genocide. And people were like, no, that's not a genocide. The Holocaust is the genocide. It's like, no, wait a second. Yeah. Those things, they're very different. But, a genocide is a genocide. And I think, I think that it's important, like they both kind of illuminate each other in different ways by understanding. Yeah, but at the same time, I should say, because I think it's also, why am I telling a story about a genocide? Aside from making that point, how do people somehow make it through? It astounds me that somehow people had their ability to make it through difficult things, and and all the ways that they do that, finding love, finding meaning, finding their testicles, whatever helps, right?
Whatever helps. hopes. It is a great story of survival, and people are going to hopefully read lots more about this because you have a virtual launch for Gary's new book tonight. It's live at 7 o'clock, and we've got a link on our website, chch.com. And if you're in the Hamilton area, make sure you check out one of our fabulous independent bookstores for a copy. And Gary, I'm so happy you're going to be part of Gritlit as well. So lots more people in Hamilton are going to find out about this story. Really another well done, well done. This one's another award winner of yours, I'm sure.
Thanks so much.